Yeah, I'm not going to say, guys, we have to start the show talking about my fantasy team and just how disappointing it was. But, we could. I'm just saying we could, because most of the time, my understanding is that people love two things. People love hearing about your poker game and your fantasy team.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've got some amazing bad beat stories. I mean, if people want to hear about some shit that's happened to me on the river, pull up.
We could do that. Maybe we'll do that tonight. It's the late night happy hour. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky, joined tonight by CBSLA's Chris Hayre, covers the Chargers among other things. Gets to sit next to and talk to Jim Hill. Just thinking of that. I mean, that is worth the price of admission. Chris, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. That's the dream, man. Where you're interacting with Jim Hill on a daily, weekly basis. That says it all. I'm good, guys. I appreciate you having me.
When you have your weekly, bi-weekly, or 2 times a week, 3 times, however often you interact with Jim Hill, and the conversation's about to start, does he always get the first question to you? Like, does he get that?
Of course. I mean, come on.
Good. I mean, absolutely. It's the way it should be.
What's great is that I get to see Jim, if we're passing by doing hits. Actually, the studio has been weird now because of just the whole pandemic. We were doing our hits at City Club, Los Angeles.
Yes.
So I would see Jim there, and it's awesome because the Chargers are also broadcast partners with CBSLA. So not only do I get to interact with Jim at work at CBS, but you see him on the Zoom calls, and we've done some Chargers specials together with some of the free agents, man. So it's a blast.
What is Jim Hill like on a Zoom? Like, I've never seen Jim. Dude. Is not we love Jim. Like, I'm not making fun of Jim.
Brian doesn't like Jim Hill.
Brian and I, for people who've never met him, and it's not an exaggeration to say Jim Hill is a local god in this city. You're not going to meet anybody nicer than him in our industry.
Everyone, to everyone.
He is incredibly nice to everybody, but he does not strike me as like a super techie guy.
Well, let me tell you guys this though. So this same platform that we're on right now, Jim and I did a 30 to 45 minute specials where we were in 2 different areas and we're interviewing the rookie class, the Chargers rookie class. So one night we had Justin Herbert, I forget, I think it was like Alohi Gilman, Joshua Kelly, and then one night we had Kenneth Murray and a couple others guys. And Jim and I are in different places, but we're going back and forth. It was seamless. So listen, Jim has been able to adapt to this new world with no problems.
I just feel bad because there's only so many places he can wear a suit right now. It's like
does he wear a suit on the Zoom calls?
Jim, you know what? Because he was working, he was doing double duty, of course. So he was rocking a suit because he was working over at City Club. So I'm here in a probably something similar to this, but Jim's always going to outdress you. Whether you see him at Staples Center or City Club or studio or a game or a press conference, Jim, he always gets the first question. He's always the best dressed.
I also feel like Jim right now is probably the only person who is doing Zoom calls, even if he's wearing a suit on the top, who's actually still wearing the suit on the bottom too. Like, everybody else is doing a Zoom like with the suit and the tie and like a pair of shorts. I don't think that's how Jim rolls.
Yeah, for me, it's been a lot of like the last 6 months. It's been okay, nice shirt, Jim shorts, right? I mean, I feel like that's been the norm for everybody. I'm still trying to get adjusted to, like, I haven't been in the Chargers office since March. And it's still kind of strange to do this. And I don't want to get into this mode where I feel like this is the norm. But, I don't know. You don't know. No one knows what the next 6 months to a year is going to hold for the sports world. But, we've been able to adapt on the Chargers side. And it's things like this that I think are fun, right? Where you get to, pick guests, find guests, and just talk ball, whether it's football or the NBA. But it's still weird. It's still kind of hard for me to grasp that this is kind of our new normal.
It's funny. Like, we started this in part just as like a thing to do during the pandemic because we did a lot of fill-in work for 710, and it's like there's nothing to fill in for. Like, nobody's traveling. Sedano's not going anywhere. Like, Mason and Ireland are traveling. Like, nobody's going anywhere. So it's like, we needed to do something. Right. And so, you can't go on. Even Mason couldn't even take a vacation. And so we were sitting there going, like, are people going to want to just talk for an hour at 10 o'clock? Like, it's not like we're, Kimmel or something like that. And even he doesn't keep people for an hour. And it turned out people were so desperate to have someone to talk to during the pandemic that the answer was yes.
The thing is that you can get, I do our Chargers Weekly podcast, and, people are home. So, I mean, it's probably easier to track down guests, and as opposed to doing it, last year when no one knew what Zoom was, you're doing these audio podcasts. Now you can kind of translate them into, these Zoom interviews where they're kind of these dual purpose deals where you can use it as video content, and you can also have your 15, 20-minute audio interview too. So it's been actually an interesting kind of experiment in how you create content, how you get guests, and how you can kind of use a podcast, for instance. Like, I'm sure you guys probably transfer this into a podcast, right? So
yes.
It's like,
I'm glad you mentioned that. And people can listen, rate,
yeah.
review, and subscribe at the Late Night Happy Hour podcast on iTunes. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been able to do is when we play, for instance, like we had Rich Gannon on the podcast last week because he called the Dolphins Chargers game, and it's I gave Rich a shout, and I'm like, hey, can you come on Wednesday or Thursday? He's like, how about now? I'm like, all right, cool. I'll be ready in 20 minutes. So that's just kind of the world we're living in now, where if somebody's available, they'll let you know and you knock it out.
I gotta be honest with you. Oh, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, I feel like we collectively, societally have gotten past, because unfortunately we've been in this pandemic for so long and have had to adjust for so long. I think we've collectively gotten past the periods of Zoom, like Zoom anxiety. Like, I know a lot of people who really started getting anxious at the notion of having to do Zoom calls, and it would really stress them out. And now it's the new normal. I think what's going to start stressing people out eventually is being back in person with people and having to reinvigorate our lives around actual human beings in those type of settings that feel like they matter.
I don't know what that's going to feel like. It's like we're getting used to this. And that's what I say, it's like one of those things that I don't want to get used to, because I do like that interaction. I like seeing you guys at a Lakers game, or, it's almost one of those things where instead of working 5 days a week in the office, let's do 2, right? And then let's do the other 3 at home and get into your routine. And I feel very productive at home, especially if you can accomplish a lot of the stuff that we're doing here. But I don't want to get in the groove where we have no human interaction, because I feel like the pandemic, I think back to I think it was in March. It was one of the second to last Laker game that I think I covered against the Clippers.
Yeah.
Just the massive amount of people that were outside the locker room, the massive amount of people that go inside the Lakers locker room, that's gone. That's done. I don't know what it's going to look like in the future, but I don't want it to change that much, if that makes any sense.
I think the middle ground, I got to be honest, I could do without those scrums. It would be nice to have some type of interaction with players face to face, just because, if nothing else, even press conference questions, those type of settings are going to be better for the responses you're going to get if they actually can see who they're talking to. But the days of being cattle, just around these guys' locker and just jammed all together while we're waiting for these guys to get dressed so they can, answer these. First of all, half these guys are answering these questions, still running on adrenaline, and they often have to answer pretty inane questions that people are trying to set up for a soundbite. The whole thing is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it's not good for. But I don't need to be crammed in the back of a 17-row scrum, not asking LeBron a question. It doesn't. And plus it's just weird. It's weird for everyone. A guy comes out of the shower, and we're all just standing there, and we wait, and he's getting dressed, and it's you do this it's just weird. Like, he knows we're there. We know he's there. Where like there's nothing about it that is even kind of organic and
the
and
game
not so
day
like
ones, yeah.
there
The game
could
day
be
ones
some
are different.
there could be some better ways to do this where maybe guys get brought out or whatever it is. I gotta be honest with you though. I haven't I get more opportunities to ask LeBron a question after a regular game in the current setup than I ever would in the locker room.
It's different with the NFL. Like the NFL beat, I think it's more of a necessity for some of these guys to get into the locker room. And I don't mean on game day. I mean like a Wednesday. Like keep in mind,
right.
you have 53 guys and practice squad guys. So you got about 60, 70 guys throughout the course of a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday that are in that locker room. You have open locker room for a certain period of time. And if you want to get a story kind of off the beaten path, you can go talk to the backup defensive tackle. You could go talk to a member of the secondary, and it's harder to do that when you only have a few guys a day that are all on the same call. If you have a story or a storyline, everybody's hearing it, as opposed to you being able to go have a relationship with the guy in the locker room. So I think that part of it, especially from an NFL perspective, is a little more difficult because it's harder to be a storyteller when you're kind of confined to this Zoom press conference.
Yeah, I want to get back to the Chargers here in a second because I mean, part of the problem is I think maybe there aren't enough of us in LA. I am completely fascinated by the Chargers, but I just saw a tweet from Woj.
Yes,
that Milwaukee is in fact landing Bogdan Bogdanović in a sign and trade from so he's going to go from Sacramento to Milwaukee. So
what?
And we can break this down in a minute. We don't know the details. Here's my question. This is tampering, right? Like, how do you put together a sign and trade before free agency?
This happened, right? This happened with, and by the way, the Bucks are trading DiVincenzo, DJ Wilson, Ilyasova, and presumably some draft picks or something. That's the deal. That's the deal. That's so
terrible. I don't mind, but how is this happening? Now?
Remember when Chris Paul got traded to the Rockets? That was total tampering.
It had to be because it happened 30 seconds after the moratorium ended.
Yes. I remember when Chris Paul got traded to the Lakers, I was working for the Lakers in a completely different capacity. I'll never forget that day.
I was playing power forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God.
Yeah, guys, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. This is free agency, NBA draft. We had the Masters on Sunday. Usually when it's from end of July to February, it's almost like head down, strictly NFL, and then you pick your head up and you're like, all right, what else is going on in the world? And the entire world is backwards, right? The Lakers and Dodgers are winning championships in October. There's an NBA draft. There's a massive amount of trades, rumors, and scuttlebutt in the NBA here in the middle of November. It's just wild.
I think the NFL benefits tremendously from having a Sunday of a major tournament going on because it makes Red Zone incredible. Like the amount of stuff that was going on Red Zone because of that golf tournament was spectacular.
You never see the afternoon games outweigh the morning games. There were
everything about it was great.
Games. Yeah, it was
so
good.
More of that. The arms race right now going on in the NBA is insane. The Pacific Division now has a viable, obviously, Lakers team, Clippers team. The Warriors are going to be back this year. The Suns just picked up Chris Paul. The only garbagey looking team is, I don't know, the Kings, I guess, who just traded. And they're not terrible.
No, I think they're pushing.
No, but
terrible.
They're worse bad teams than the Sacramento Kings. They're a pretty good bad team.
Yeah, you know what? It's
okay. I see what you're saying, but
they're not going to win 12 games this year. They're not that bad. They're a 29 or 33 win team or something like that, give or take, in an 82 game season.
You guys tell me this because the Lakers, obviously, we saw the Schroeder news. I asked you before we started, like, what's going on with Kyle Kuzma? Like,
yes,
is that something that is he on the move? Is he sticking around? Like,
well, you wrote the moving part, Andy. You wrote about this today for the Athletic, so you break that part down. But then the more interesting news with Kuz is the social media angle of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, with Kuzma, the social media thing, he apparently deactivated his own Twitter account. And it was after saying that he was tired of people disrespecting him, I guess, online. And, he said he was going to have people put respect on his name, paraphrasing a little bit. Then I just saw a report that he apparently deactivated his own account, which I got to be honest, it's for the best. Like this really, I think, is the best for both Kyle Kuzma and the Lakers. Like Kuz and Brian and I both like Kuz in the time we've been around him, and I do think he's a hard worker. I do think he cares about basketball. He is too online and sort of too of that world for his own good. Yeah. And I feel like it's just better off for him if he just simply puts the phone down and just gets away from it for a little while. Like he's just rarely do good things happen for Kuz when it involves something with social media. Like remember during the pandemic, those photos popped up of him and I don't know if they're still together, but his girlfriend Winnie Harlow.
They are.
As far as I know, but they were at that record release party that the theme was everybody wearing hazmat suits, which by definition means the theme was none of y'all should be here because it's a pandemic. And like, that's the type of thing that gets out with Kuzma. And, in the end, was it harmless? Sure. He didn't get COVID. He went to the bubble. He contributed to the championship, but it's for the best. I mean, especially with him going into a contract year, like it truly is for the best.
Kuz isn't on this Periscope. I
don't believe so.
Well, I mean, we don't know.
He's not on Twitter anymore, so he can't see the feed to. But
well,
I will say,
let's be honest. He's got a burner. He's got a burner.
Anthony,
there's no way Kuzma does not have a burner. I refuse to believe that he does not have a burner account on Twitter. He is monitoring the comings and goings on this site.
Yeah.
Did Andy go away?
I'm right here.
I think now you're here, Chris, right?
I'm here. Am I not here?
Okay, there goes Andy. Now he's back.
I didn't realize I left.
Yeah, no. Kuzma definitely has a burner. Yeah, P. Madeira agrees with you. We did have, Anthony Irwin and Harrison Fagan on Friday, and we were engaging in Kyle Kuzma disrespect. So, I mean, I'd like to think that we were the people who got him this angry and also the people that chased him off Twitter. In which case, you're welcome, Lakers. I mean, because it's better this way. He's a weird guy.
Is he on the move?
No.
I mean, actually, this is one of the things I wrote about with The Athletic when I broke down the Dennis Schroeder trade with Danny Green and the 28 pick going to OKC. To me, that feels like Kuzma's definitely going to be on this team because for so long we had heard about Kuzma potentially being the sweetener for some type of impact deal that would involve Danny Green because he was the only guy on the team with a salary big enough to land that type of player. Once that's now off the table, Kuzma doesn't make enough money by himself to get moved for an impact player. So unless like they manage to have some type of package with Kuzma, Quinn Cook, an opted-in JaVale McGee,
which apparently is enough to get you Bogdan Bogdanovic.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like
I mean, I guess it wasn't off the table, but like the Lakers wouldn't have really any options outside of just cobbling things together. Yeah. And Kuzma would really, really have to appeal to some teams. So my read, never say never, but my read on that deal was Kuzma's going to be around next season.
Well, you know what? You would think a young guy like that, like maybe something like this does lock him in. And you have AD, you have LeBron. Maybe he sees himself in a different class, and he's going to prove it. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't know, but I don't know. I feel there's
there's a performative thing I think with Kuz because he's a weird guy to kind of to look at because Andy's right. Like he really does work hard. He really does want to be good, and he thinks of himself as a frontline NBA scorer. I don't think he's as good as he thinks he is, but I admire. Like last year, Kuz came into camp and he's like setting the bar incredibly high for himself in terms of the standard, and talking about all-star teams and this and that and whatever. Like, and he didn't come close to meeting it. But yeah. I respect a guy who comes in and puts the pressure on himself to go and perform it on a larger level. That's essentially what Anthony Davis did. Saying I want this challenge of delivering a title to LA. But Kuz he is both a hard worker and too Hollywood, a little too aware of the marketing, a little too. And I don't mean that like go make your money, build a career. It's not a criticism in that way, but in terms of kind of actually accomplishing what I think it is that he wants to accomplish in terms of being taken seriously, in terms of all this other stuff, he sometimes will get in his own way. And so, he is very much of that. If you don't put it on the internet, it doesn't happen generation. And it probably doesn't serve him as well as he would like.
Yeah.
Plus that shoe that he designed with Puma is kind of ugly.
I didn't see the I didn't see
it looks like
shoe.
A wrestling. It really does look like a wrestling shoe. That's been the most common comparison I've seen. I'll look to see if I can find a picture of it, but it really does kind of look like a wrestling shoe.
As I'm looking, I just got this Peloton. Do you guys have a Peloton?
Oh,
I do not have a Peloton.
Look at you with your Peloton.
Listen, I just got it 2 months ago. Like I got it kind of late in the pandemic, but I love it because it's right in front of you. You're committed to it. Like once you get it,
right next to it.
It's right behind me. Right here.
I was gonna say if you were like where you could hop on.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not gonna be doing the rest of that.
Ramona Shelburne
did her show from an elliptical.
Did she
like
really?
the entire hour?
Yes.
She put in a major workout. It was incredibly impressive.
I'm just saying it's been done. Nobody's ever Peloton. Yeah. Do you have a window that's like a wall that's just one giant window that you can look out of while you do your Peloton?
You have to actually. Mine faces a wall because you focus on the screen. You focus it's like these on-demand classes. So I mean, you're kind of focused on whoever the instructor is. But I've never done the spinning or the cycling before, but got it a couple of months ago, dude. I'm hooked because
that's what everybody says about it. Like it's apparently the Peloton is it's like the crack of exercise routines. It's like the most addictive thing you will ever get into trying to stay in shape. I mean, everybody I know who has a Peloton just says it is insanely addictive.
And it's a couple different things. Like some people like the competitive leaderboard aspect of it, where you're racing against even yourself, right? You want to beat your own personal record, or you're in a class with like thousands of people. And then the other part of it is just like, I think the availability, like I'll work in the office. It's right behind me. You can, instead of like driving to the gym, it's there. So like the accessibility of it too. Like I don't make this a Peloton infomercial, but like I'm feeling the Peloton.
Well, I mean, look, Chris, you've got a profile, and if they hear about this, maybe something good comes out of it. I would try to make this a Peloton infomercial. Quite frankly, we could use the sponsorship,
right?
And
we're Peloton willing to pay us. I'd absolutely make this a Peloton.
I'll do every show on a bike moving forward. I'll get my ass on one of those bikes instantly.
You guys are thinking smart though. That's that you monetize the late night happy hour presented by Peloton. I like that. Get a little skin, behind this thing. Yeah,
I've watched the stock go up. They've got money. All right, so explain to me the game yesterday, the NFL day yesterday was kind of bonkers, but the game yesterday in Miami was a very disappointing one for the Chargers. But the part of what I'm interested in with them is what this season has been, because this was supposed to be, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The reception in the city is relatively lukewarm for the Chargers. They haven't necessarily set the town on fire, trying to establish something this season, and now that there's no fans, in this what would have been a big opening of the stadium in a lot of ways. What has this season been for the Chargers in terms of trying to gain a foothold in LA?
Well, I think just in general, it's been a strange season for the Chargers. The biggest thing, and I go back to 2018 when this team was 12-4. Last year, you go 5-11. I'm like, they were winning all the close games 2 years ago when they were 12-4. They didn't do it last year, and it's kind of spilling over into this year. And listen, every NFL team can make the injury excuse to some extent. But when you talk about, like, I remember being at training camp in July and seeing Derwin James fly around. And Derwin James, his rookie year, made an unbelievable, indelible impact in that locker room. I mean, 16 games started. The energy that he provides, not only to the defense, but just the culture of the team, the locker room in general, it was infectious, man. He gets hurt last year, misses, I think, 11 games. The year before that, Joey Bosa misses like 9 games. So the one thing I look at from an injury perspective is, like, we have not seen the two best players on the Chargers on the field together. We have not seen Derwin James and Joey Bosa together. But that's not the reason why I think they're 2-7. I think you can't put your finger on some of the losses. First of all, we didn't expect Justin Herbert to be starting so early. He's been the very pleasant surprise. Like, he's
been great.
If you were to poll all the GMs in the NFL and you're like, hey, what's the most important thing you need to be set up for success? Most of them would probably say a 23-year-old franchise quarterback. I mean, this kid is as advertised. He didn't play as well. He looked human for the first time on Sunday, and he still had 3 total touchdowns. Just the ability to close games, man, for whatever reason, and it's been something different each week. They led. I go back to week 2, wire to wire, get the Super Bowl champs. They did not trail in that entire game until the final gun in overtime. They were a hook and ladder away from beating the Carolina Panthers. It was just a mishap bobble between Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler. We talk about the Bucs, a 17-point lead against Tom Brady and the Bucs, a 17-point lead against Drew Brees and the Saints back-to-back weeks. You lose the lead and you lose the game. The Broncos game, 21-point lead, middle of the third quarter. The Raiders game, last play of the game.
Right. So but that's the thing about the thing is mystifying. It's like, it's one thing to be a team that loses, can't quite figure out a way to lose again, to close out games against good teams. The Brady comes back and beats you. It happens. The Saints come back and beat you. It happens. Like, it's easy to make those kinds of mistakes, especially when you're not at full strength. But they managed to figure out how to narrowly lose to everyone, like the bad teams too. Yeah. Like, there's no reason for Denver to come back and beat them.
Is there a commonality you're seeing?
Right.
In like a linking thread in terms of these losses happening the same way?
See, I don't see a commonality because they're happening the same way, but they're not. Like okay, same outcome, but it's happening differently. The same outcome. Yes, exactly. So I use the Saints in the Bucs game as an example of having big leads in the first half, losing the lead, losing the game. They had I think it was a 50-yard field goal. They make that field goal against the Saints. It never goes to overtime, and they win. And they beat the Saints. You're having an entirely different conversation. The 21-point lead against the Broncos, it happened like that. And again, I don't see the commonality, guys. I don't know why they can't finish the games. I don't know what it is, because 2 years ago, I think they were 6-1 in those games. So it's a combination of you throw your hands up and then just every year is different. I will say this, though, from an injury perspective, no Derwin James, no Chris Harris Jr., the right side of your offensive line that we were touting all offseason, Brian Bulaga, Trey Turner, who's been a Pro Bowler every year except for his rookie year, they haven't played together. The Austin Eckler, he's been out. So it's hard to win without your guys. They found a way to stay in these games. They just can't close them. I don't know what it is, but it's unfortunate because the season starts to slip away. 3 weeks ago, we were having an entirely different conversation. Beat Denver, beat the Raiders, you're right back in this thing. They lost both of those games, and then Sunday was kind of the first game where they were really just outplayed from the beginning. It wasn't one of those games that came down to the final gun. Block punt, first possession of the game, that kind of set the tone.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Miami made the Rams look bad too. I mean, that
Miami's
defense
good.
is routinely making decent quarterbacks look pretty ordinary. And I like Anthony Lynn. I think, I don't think anything has been going on long enough to really decide, it's hard to look at all the stuff that you've described to me, at least. And I don't watch them as closely as you do, obviously, but, and say like the head coach is like, your season starts with your starting quarterback being stabbed through the lung by the medical staff. You're off to a tough start. And I think it's a really hard thing to separate the coaching from the injuries, from all these other things. It doesn't seem like you can make any real evaluations until you have your whole team on the field.
Well, also keep in mind, for as good as Justin Herbert has played, he was on the grass for the first time with his teammates at the end of July.
Yes.
Right. So there is no offseason program. He was thrown into that game. Imagine being tapped on the shoulder right before the coin toss saying, Justin, you're going to start your first NFL game right now with no heads up against the Super Bowl champions to open SoFi Stadium for the Chargers.
That's a lot.
8-play, 79-yard drive, first touchdown, made it look like he had it scripted, ready to go. So like he's been fantastic. I almost liken it, and I hope this would bode well for the Chargers, obviously, but I go back to the first year Aaron Rodgers started, right? 2008. 6-10. Rodgers was fantastic, though, and you knew what you had, right? He's had one losing season since 2008. So I look at that, and if there's a silver lining for Chargers fans, you have your franchise quarterback. You're playing in the best. Have you guys been to the stadium?
Nope.
No, not yet.
Places you have to go, I think, several times to see everything it has to offer. And obviously, we haven't seen it with 70,000 fans in it, but it's the most ridiculous place I've ever seen in terms of a stadium. So you have a new stadium, you have a franchise quarterback, you have the best uniforms in sports, man. I really do think like the throwback Dolphins unis with the sunshine gold pants and the powder blue yesterday. That was a great uniform.
It was a great look. Oh my God, that was a great looking.
Oh, such a good look. But
I don't understand how like a team can. This is another thing, because I firmly believe that when you dress well, you play well.
Good, feel good, yeah.
And the Chargers are the best dressed team, and for like the Navy combination, which is a little bit, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more of a kind of a riskier look. They get all the details
riskier?
Right. They changed
Risky?
They pulled it off.
Really?
Shut up, Andy. But they even like the details of changing the lightning bolt on
really
the helmet.
their courage during these games.
Yeah, the bolt is a little bit different this year. The bolt isn't as it's a little straighter than it was in years past, and the uniform combos are. I mean, you don't go wrong. You have the all whites. You got the whites and the yellow pants. The combo we saw yesterday in Miami. The uniforms are phenomenal.
Not the problem. Definitely not the problem.
Uniforms are not the problem.
How significant is it that they have a guy that you think that they believe can be a star, a marketable, and it's the quarterback, and you can market, a star quarterback in this city? How significant is that, do you think?
It's gigantic. I mean, if you look at the division and you see Patrick Mahomes in the division for the next decade plus, you better have somebody to combat him, right? Derek Carr's having a good year. I think the Broncos, they got to look at their situation with Drew Lock and wonder if he's the guy moving forward. But I think, stars in this league, especially stars right now, Justin's a rookie. You have this window. We've seen this window with guys like Russell Wilson where, you have these guys on a rookie deal. You build around that guy. You build yourself up to getting to a Super Bowl. Like you have a window right now where you could take care of guys like Joey Bosa, who they took care of, Keenan Allen, who they took care of, Austin Eckler, a couple other guys, and build around Justin and then also have a defense to complement what he does offensively. And right now, they're just simply down Derwin James and Drew Tranquill, who I think was going to have 110 tackles this year, and Joey Bosa the last couple of games. So, I hate to talk about injuries because you look at San Francisco and other teams around the league that are just decimated by injuries.
But they're also losing. It's not like
it makes a difference.
Right.
It makes a difference. I mean, you see Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey on one side. The Chargers need their Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and Derwin and Joey Bosa.
Well, it also too, I mean, for the Chargers looking to get a foothold in this city, and there's a lot of competition, football wise, in terms of the 20-something years that LA went without the NFL at all, and USC really became the professional football team, on a lot of levels, we'll just say. And really, they're the number one football story in this town. The Raiders are still a big deal here, and that makes it difficult for the Chargers because you're talking about a division rivalry,
yes,
in this city where a lot of people in LA root for the team that is a rival of now their local
more than
team.
they root for the Rams, but at least they're not in the division.
But what I was going to say, though, that the Chargers have an opportunity right now is Justin Herbert not just looking like he could be a franchise quarterback. He looks like he could potentially be better than the other supposed franchise quarterback in LA with Jared Goff. Like Herbert right now, if nothing else, his trajectory looks higher than Goff's could be. It looks like there at least could be that potential. That's a really big deal, I think, for the Chargers when it comes to marketability.
If you could pick one guy right now, which guy would you pick?
Between Herbert and Goff?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I mean, listen, Herbert is – I mean,
I would take Herbert.
I would take Herbert.
Just the mobility, the mobility that Herbert has that Goff doesn't have. It's such a big deal.
Herbert, okay, so he has 3 rushing touchdowns this year, the most by Chargers running back since 1992, okay? But it's not just him getting the ball to Keenan Allen. It's not just him getting the ball to Mike Williams and Hunter Henry. He has, I think, 13 different players on the Chargers have a receiving or a rushing touchdown. He's elevating the play of the guys around him. Have you ever heard of Donald Parham Jr. or Jalen Guyton or Tyron Johnson or Gabe Neighbors? These guys that you had never heard of. Justin is elevating the play of those guys. He's getting the ball to guys. He's not looking at locking in on Keenan or just locking in on Mike. He's going through his progressions. He's making the right reads, making the right decisions with the football. And you're seeing that on a weekly basis, which is a really encouraging sign for the Chargers.
How has he been doing? Because this is something that always fascinates me when it comes to young athletes in any sport. Once they start breaking out, teams around the league will start getting more tape on a guy, and they'll start being able to adjust more. And typically it is harder for young players to adjust to the adjustments than I think it is for, experienced coaches, experienced, players, opponents, all that stuff to make those adjustments. How has he been doing, do you think, during this period where opponents are starting to get a better idea of who he is?
I think he's done well. I mean, again, it's 8 starts now, so it's probably a small sample size in terms of, people are going to obviously look at game tape and try to make requisite adjustments. But the way that he has played, and I mentioned his ability to run the football with his legs. You didn't have that with Phillip Rivers. The ability to get the ball.
No, not really.
No, you didn't have that with Phillip.
I mean, in fairness, the guy ought to be tired. He's got like 15 kids. I mean, he should be exhausted. The fact that Phillip Rivers can even be coherent enough to play NFL quarterback, like good or bad, just coherent, is like a minor
really
miracle. I don't know how that guy does it.
It's amazing. In Phillip, obviously, man, I think he just moved into 5th all time in passing yards. So I think Justin's got a ways to go to get into Phillip Rivers territory.
He's going to pass Phillip Rivers though for rushing yards, like career rushing yards this season.
He may do that for sure. But Justin, I think adjusts well. One of the things that really struck me with him when the Chargers drafted him, they talked about how he came to visit the Chargers, and I think he met with the offensive coaching staff, and he got like one little thing wrong on like the test they gave him, and he like beat himself up over it. His brother has I forget what his degree is. It's something very high level, right? He's one of the smartest kids you'll ever be around, and he picks things up quickly, and he doesn't make the same mistake twice. I think the Dolphins, and Daniel Jeremiah did a great job breaking this down today on NFL Network. They brought a lot of pressure against Justin, and they disguised a lot of things. So he's going to have to go back at the tape and look at that. But he's been great under pressure the entire year. He's been throwing deep balls to Guyton and to Mike Williams, and always making the right play. So that's why I say, you guys are 100% right. It's all about winning in this city. You have to win, but you also have to. You better have your franchise quarterback to get there. The Chargers have that. It's about continuing to build the roster, staying healthy. There's always a combination of skill and luck in the NFL. You got to hit it right. You got to have your guys ready at the right times, especially trying to make that playoff run. But you better have your franchise quarterback. And I think the Chargers have that guy, and that's an encouraging thing.
Anybody want to take a stab on what America thinks? You could choose between Goff and Justin Herbert. I just put up a poll. What the ratio is?
How'd that
First
go?
of all, who do you think they chose? First of all,
I think they went with the guy powder blue.
You are correct. What do you think the percentage is?
I'm just guessing. This is just a guess. 80-20.
Right on the nose.
No
Perfect.
way. Am I serious? Are you serious?
No, it is currently 80-20.
I think it's actually in climbing.
Hey, one of the things I've noticed is that this kid. So the NFL has like a Pepsi Zero Sugar Rookie of the Week. He's won it like 6 times. Okay, like he's always in the conversation, and Chargers fans are very, very excited for Justin Herbert, and in a draft class too, where. I think this was lost on a lot of people when Joe Burrow, who I think is going to be really, really good, and Tua, who I think is going to be fantastic, they got drafted ahead of Justin Herbert. One thing that Tua had and Burrow had that Herbert didn't necessarily have at Oregon were the weapons. We talking about Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs for Tua, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Justin Jefferson, who had another great game today on Monday Night Football. Herbert didn't have those weapons. So when you put him in an offense with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler, naturally he's going to thrive. But I keep going back to the guys that no one really knew about. He's making those guys better too. So I think during this draft evaluation process, we get caught up in, all right, Burrow's the guy, no question. Tua's the guy, no question. And you forget about the guy who maybe didn't have the weapons that the other guys had in college.
Brian, am I remembering correctly? Isn't that what Ted Wynn said to us about Herbert
More or
as
less,
well?
yeah. That Herbert just, some of it's weapons and some of it just didn't. Whatever he was doing at Oregon just didn't look as good. It's a stupid way to evaluate athletes and stuff, but with your quarterback, particularly in the league now, there's a certain pop, like a certain ability, like to you can move around the pocket a little bit, you can extend a play. Mike Ross points out in the chat, Mike Floss one, who's Mike Ross. He points out,
shout out to Delicious Pizza.
That's right. Herbert's dynamic. He's got electric arm. He can extend plays.
I said Mike Floss is right. The ability to extend the play.
Yes.
I mean, that is such an underrated thing, man. If a play breaks down and you have a guy that can pick up 10 yards with his legs, or find a guy just streaking down the sidelines, and a guy like Jalen Guyton, I mean, that's what Justin Herbert's done.
But it's even more than that. It's the stuff of, Tom Brady's never been an elusive player, but he's really slick inside the pocket. He steps up, he moves, he's especially when you go back, to now he falls down when you get near him because he's 142 years old and you don't want to get hurt. But, like the little stuff, my problem with Goff has always been that he isn't a player who can do stuff in a dirty pocket very effectively, under pressure very effectively, in a clean pocket with time to throw and whatever. He's good, but most quarterbacks are. And so there's that electricity that's missing from Goff that I think is significant, not just because I think, it impacts the quality of play, but like, the fourth quarter, you got, one drive, you got this, like, certain players inspire a certain kind of confidence. And I don't know if Goff is that guy yet. They bring you from behind. I mean, look, almost did it against Buffalo early in the year. He's obviously, like, he's good. He doesn't suck, but there's something that, that he doesn't seem to have, like a little pop or whatever it is that a lot of these other young quarterbacks do.
I think Goff and the fact that those guys have been together now for a while, I think they have a good understanding of what they're getting in each other. The thing I'm encouraged with regarding Justin is even during these losses, they were at their own 1 yard line against Carolina. Darn near almost won the game. He drove them all the way down the field. The Chiefs game, he threw a costly interception in the second half. That was his first ever start. He played well enough for the Chargers to win that game. And the game against the Raiders, drove them down. Couldn't have put the ball in a better position for Parm to come down with it. And obviously, the replay showed otherwise. But he's shown the moxie to close a game. They just haven't been able to do it.
I really needed that catch, by the way.
Yeah, did you have Herbert or did you have Donald Parham Jr.?
I had Herbert. I really needed that. I don't go that. Our league isn't that deep.
You got like a 3 tight end league.
Yeah, I needed that catch.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't say enough good things about the kid, and I love his attitude. Every post game presser, he steps up there, he says the right things, man, and he wants to get better. I think having an offseason where you're actually on the field is going to be just huge for this kid. And again, I go back to just everything has been Zoom for these guys during the offseason. So they didn't really have an opportunity to get to know their teammates, build that chemistry that you usually want your rookie quarterback to have going into a season.
How concerned is the organization about getting in with LA and making that work?
I don't know if there's much. Again, I think it just comes down to winning. When I was at the Lakers, I remember my boss saying the business follows the basketball, right? If you're winning on the court, everything will follow. So I honestly truly believe if the Chargers can stack wins starting in 2021 and beyond, that stuff takes care of itself. Mm-hmm. It's about the product on the field, and I think that is the biggest thing. I mean,
do they feel? But I guess like we always talk about like the Clippers versus the Lakers, like who was like like the Clippers have been a tremendously profitable and popular organization in LA for a long time. Like, profitable for the bad reasons when Donald Sterling just didn't spend any money on them, and profitable when they've been good. They're just not the Lakers. And, I think there's a little more wiggle room in football for a team to emerge over time as both of these teams come back. But like, do they see themselves as competition with the Rams, or just trying to stake out a loyal following in Los Angeles that makes them, part of the city's fabric and whatever, where the Rams really aren't part of the equation?
The Clippers, I mean, put it another way, the Clippers are not actively trying to make this a Clipper town. Like they recognize.
That's a good way of putting it.
They recognize, as much as, they did the street lights over spotlights and, some other really stupid
regretful
slogans.
I believe very regretful.
Yeah.
I think the Lakers Clippers thing is just a completely different conversation because you have one team that's won 17 championships.
Right. But I think they recognize, I think they actually recognize, even though this year's marketing campaign might lead you to believe otherwise, they're never going to overtake the Lakers, and it's really about just carving out their own foothold. But I think, like what Brian was saying, there is, at least in theory, I think more of a runway for the Chargers if there is that type of rivalry with the Rams, just because the Rams have more of an institutional background in LA. Yeah. But, it's been a few decades before, they really were a big thing in this city.
I think the beauty of this city is it's a Lakers and it's a Dodgers town, right? And I do think there's a piece of pie for all these other teams. And, there's going to be ebbs and flows. You see the LA Kings, they win a couple Stanley Cups and people are pumped about it. But there's another layer with the NFL. And I think there is something to be said about playing in that stadium and winning games and having a franchise quarterback, because a franchise quarterback is truly a face, right? If you have a guy that can have sustained success in this city, I don't think we've truly seen what it could be yet. Obviously, the Rams went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. I felt like the unofficial launch of football in Los Angeles was this year in the stadium, and unfortunately, it was you don't have the fans in the stands, right? So I do think 2021 is really going to be that year that we've been waiting for a long time, where fans are in the stands, people can see what SoFi Stadium has to offer. And, in the Chargers case, it's like, okay, now you got a guy, Justin Herbert, that people are excited to see, right? And you have a beautiful place for them to watch the games. Then it's about winning. And that's what I think takes care of itself in terms of that piece of your pie, right? You find your loyal following in Los Angeles. I think the Chargers have a pretty cool. It's actually cool to like do these podcasts and have people from Germany and even the East Coast of the United States and Europe. Like there's Chargers fans around the world. The NFL is just, I think, kind of a different animal. Right. It's something that we're still
it's always a big deal. It's always going to be a dominant story.
And we're still trying to figure out how it's going to look in Los Angeles. And unfortunately, with this pandemic, a big part of that is not being able to see the fans in the stands right now. That's why I'm really excited to see everybody there in 2021, including you guys, man, because it's an event. I always told people when I worked in sales at the Lakers, like going to Staples Center on Friday night, that is not a game. That is an event that you go there for an event. And that's what SoFi Stadium is.
Yeah, I will say the town, America is firmly behind Justin Herbert here. They're voting enthusiastically, and it's not even close. Now it's almost 83% for Justin Herbert, which is both I think it's both, Andy. It's an indictment on it's really an indicative of what people think about Goff and the lack of confidence that fans have in him. And the excitement around Herbert. It's both.
Guys, where's this poll? Where am I looking at this poll?
It's on our Twitter feed at Cam.
You can follow us on Twitter at Cam Brothers.
I'm following you guys. Oh, here we go.
I know it's a joke. I know you did.
There we go. Okay, yeah, we got 83% right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people, they didn't really know what to expect with Justin coming in because he was the third quarterback taken, and you think of Tua, electric, Heisman for Burrow, and I don't think a lot of people expected Justin to be on the field this early, and for what he's been able to do in such a limited amount of time, I think people are excited to see just the hands that the league is in for the next 10 years. With we're gonna see Tua and Herbert off and on for a long time. We're gonna see Herbert and Burrow. We're gonna see Herbert and Mahomes for a long time. Those are the types of matchups that I think you start traditions, right? Herbert versus Mahomes at SoFi Stadium on an annual basis is going to be really fun for the next 10 years. We're going to have that to look forward to. We're going to have, the Raiders and Chargers kind of renewing their rivalry and having kind of the characters that you're used to seeing in a rivalry kind of come to life now.
Yeah. Just have the ability to you have a quarterback who can elevate people around him. And right now, certainly it seems like Herbert's doing that and capable of doing that. And I think is sort of the thing that is missing from Goff. Andy, have you seen has like Harden been traded yet? Westbrook, like
have not
seen, like while we've been talking about football, what's been going on?
It appears that everybody's still just sort of in shock over everything the Bucks did. And the big question, and Mark Stein with the New York Times had tweeted out, an hour or so ago, which feels like 3 days ago, given the way everything's just flying around, that there's been some bustling that Giannis actually does intend to sign his Supermax. And I'm reading a tweet from him. The last 2 weeks have been filled with chatter that he indeed plans to sign his 5-year Supermax before the December 21st deadline to do so. The Bucks just made a trade that suggests they must believe it. I have to say, if they've done all of this without, I don't want to say assurances, because, I mean, even if you can tell a team that you plan to sign it, and, it's not a blood oath, you're not doing this in a court of law. You can do whatever the hell you want afterwards.
Yeah.
But this would be exceptionally aggressive, even for a player of Giannis's caliber, to give up basically, to give up all their assets other than their highest end players. And I recognize that might sound silly on the surface. They kept Middleton, they kept Brook Lopez, but they gave up pretty much all of their capital. And Drew Holiday is, I think, a really great player. I think he's a really underrated player, but he also could be a potential rental. And, Bogdan Bogdanovic is a high-end complementary player, but you don't build around him. He's not close to that good. If they did all of this without having at least a reasonably good idea of the direction with Giannis, frankly, that's insane. And it just is. Even acknowledging
soon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even acknowledging he's a 2-time MVP, like, that's pretty nuts.
Oh my God, I don't know. What's the deal with so the Supermax for Giannis would be he could sign it
like
tomorrow,
the national
right?
debt, right? He could,
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. As soon as they started, what I love,
it's up to the point where the season begins. Like, he
Right.
can't sign it once the season is underway. And since the season begins this year, December 22nd, he's got up to December 21st. This is my understanding.
This is what I think is like how these guys reside in a completely different universe than the rest of us, Chris. Because I remember, like, a couple years ago when the contract was out there for Westbrook, and he hadn't signed it yet, and then, this is the one that now is making it hard for Houston to trade him, where $40 million a year, and like he was like, I'm still thinking about it. I might get to it. I'll get to it after I go to the grocery. I mean, if somebody put a like $300 million contract in front of me, or it's like my agent calls me and says, this is an option. If I'm walking down the street, I stop, I sit down, like I stop moving because I get hit by a bus. Something terrible could happen to me. And I don't move until somebody brings me that contract to sign. And like Giannis has how many hundreds of millions of dollars, Andy? It's many, multiple hundreds.
He's already gotten paid. I mean,
yes, but
maybe
it's like,
not to this level, but he's gotten money.
He's like, I'll get to it. I mean,
Yeah,
I got to binge watch
yeah.
The Crown first. I mean,
I don't understand that either. Like, if someone told me that there was hundreds of millions of dollars on the table, all I have to do is take out this pen and sign, and I don't, I would feel a little uncomfortable, I think, at that point.
I'm not even sure like what team it, like I don't care what crappy team it is.
Yeah,
it's like $400 million. Oh, well, yeah, fine.
Well, I mean, this is actually how you know that James Harden has made an insane amount of money, and in some ways, Houston paid him too much for their own good. There's reports earlier today that Harden not only wants out of Houston, but he specifically wants to go to Brooklyn to play with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, which I think would be an absolute disaster. I don't think that can work. But that aside, Woj reported later on today that they had put a 2-year, $100 million extension on top of an offer on top of Harden's current contract, which would have made him the first player to ever make $50 million annually. And Harden declined it. But part of the problem is he's already getting 40-something million per season from Houston. Like, he's already made, like, in banked and future guaranteed money, like $250 million. And even if, say, he can't make $50 million annually with some other team because of the way the rules work and blah, blah, blah.
Make 42.
He's still going to make so much money. The money actually becomes too easy to walk away from. Like, in a lot of ways, the money becomes trapping for these teams or limiting for these teams because these guys are going to make so much flipping money no matter what. Like Houston essentially tried to bribe Harden into staying. And he's like, what do I need this bribe for? You guys already made me insanely rich.
I know. When I think of the NFL contracts and we see, so-and-so signed a 5-year, $100 million contract, they're not getting $100 million. They're getting the signing bonus money, and then a team may be able to cut you after year 2 or year 3,
Crazy.
depending on how it's structured. So, we're talking about like when you see an NBA contract, that's all going into that player's bank account versus like an NFL contract where you better go to over the cap and see what it really is.
Yeah, it's the whole thing is just insane. So we'll be doing a ton of NBA over the course of the week. We've got Justin Verrier coming on from The Ringer coming on tomorrow. We'll do our draft night show, which will double actually as a Land O'Lakers live podcast. And then Friday, we're going to have Mo Tequila on for what is the official, Andy, start of free agency, even though Bogdanovich is apparently, like, everybody's already decided where they're going, but free agency starts on Friday. Before we let you go, I wanted to ask, because the play of the weekend was very clearly the Hail Mary with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, which had to just be gutting for Houston Texans fans. That play, like, normally you see like the guy runs around a little bit, kind of wiggle around the pocket, when you throw deep and the guy bounces off someone. This was one of the most remarkable Hail Marys I've ever seen. Murray might be the only quarterback, maybe other than Mahomes, who could have even made the play, because they had him. They had him running like offhand because he's left-handed, correct?
Murray?
Is he? No, he's right-handed.
right-handed.
He's right-handed. They had him running left.
Yeah.
So away from his strength,
it wasn't
to be able to step
that
into the
spectacular a play.
I know. You're right. Let's stop talking about it. It was pretty shitty. He's falling backwards out of bounds, basically flicks the ball like 50 yards in the air. Hopkins is covered by 4 dudes, all of whom are doing their jobs, and he's got the strongest hands in the NFL where they have to specially make gloves for him. Comes down with this like, for all the talk of Mahomes, Murray's been better this year.
He's so much fun to watch.
Would you agree?
So much fun.
I think Murray's your MVP if you were voting today. If you had to submit your ballot today, I think Kyler Murray may be the MVP of the league. And 2 weeks ago, it was probably Russell Wilson. He's turned the ball over quite a few times the last few weeks. Mahomes is Mahomes. I think sometimes you take him for granted. Speaking of another guy who's great, Hail Mary ball, Aaron Rodgers. He's having a kind of a revenge season after a down year last year. But the way that the Cardinals have played, and they're first in the NFC West, to get a weapon like DeAndre Hopkins, though, I mean, like, the throw was amazing, but to outjump 3 Buffalo Bills defensive backs, bring it down like it was nothing. And he was on the sideline saying, "I knew I was going to make that catch. I knew I was going to make that catch," and I kind of believe him.
I totally believe him.
This is actually
after the fact. You'd think, yeah, okay, but no, I believe him.
This is actually a really interesting observation from Jay Leggett. Those football guys that played baseball have amazing arm strength for throws like that. I hadn't thought about it, but he's right. I mean, look at Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson. Like, these guys all have baseball backgrounds, and they all have these cannon arms. I also think, too, with Kyler Murray, like, the secret sauce with him that doesn't get talked about enough, the dude's legs are tree trunks. He's got some of the strongest looking legs I've seen, especially for a guy that size, but I think it helps him with these throws. I think it helps him, not just with being a good runner, but being harder to take down than you might expect for a guy his size. I mean, he's got this incredible base.
Well, any other probably, if we went back even 5 years ago, you would never, ever put money on a 6 foot quarterback being the number
6
one.
6 foot, and we're probably lying.
Yeah, right. And
he looks like a small child playing with these people.
So Baker Mayfield did it before Kyler, but Baker Mayfield is I think the Browns are realizing what they have in Baker, and it's the formula there is defense, run the football with Hunt and Chubb. With Kyler Murray, dude, this guy is electric. He is electric.
You know what's crazy with that is Cleveland could have taken Saquon Barkley the year that they took Baker Mayfield, and then the following year taken their undersized quarterback number 1 overall.
Yeah,
because Kyler Murray went the year after Baker Mayfield.
It's amazing, but like you also think I'd have to look back at the other players in that draft, but they had. Who did they get that year? I think they got Denzel Ward and Baker Mayfield, two kind of undersized guys at their respective positions. But they got Nick Chubb, I think. I think later that draft or the following year, and then they got Kareem Hunt on the cheap. So you have this two-headed attack now. Just think of the other players you could have gotten, maybe in protecting a guy like Kyler Murray, and just think of the Cardinals. I mean, we talked about Josh Rosen, who was in our backyard. He was the starter. It took a lot of guts to say we're going to cut bait with the guy that we drafted to be our franchise quarterback after 1 year. And we're going to bring in another guy, and we're just going to start over. Okay. You can do that in this like new NFL salary cap. Other years you couldn't do that.
Let me ask you a question, Chris, because this is something like my wife is actually sick of hearing me talk about this. She's like, just go do it and stop like making this into a thing. We grew up in St. Louis, and I am old enough that I was actually there for the then St. Louis Cardinals, who became the Arizona Cardinals. And I was a diehard fan of them, even though, I mean, it really required being diehard because it was a very unpleasant experience. They were one of the worst run franchises like in any sport on this planet. And when they moved, my 13-year-old self was angry and heartbroken and vengeful and vowed that I would never be a fan of them again. And for a while, it was very easy to not be a fan of them. It actually, in a lot of ways, was more pleasant not to be a fan. The last couple years, I've been wanting to go back. Is it okay to go? Like, does it make me a front runner to go back?
No. Go back.
Go back. I remember when I was a kid, we had Washington football team season tickets. I grew up diehard, right? And the St. Louis Cardinals were in the NFC East.
Yes,
and I remember being a kid in elementary school, the Dallas Giants, the old NFC East. And I remember going to the St. Louis Cardinals games, at least once a year. But I think you're allowed to go back, man. You have a history with the team. They may have moved. But
and Brian will attest, I was a massive fan.
Yeah, no, we used to go to games. We get the hot chocolate. You sit up at the top of Busch Stadium. It was cold. It was fun. We had a good time. The team was awful. Back. Yeah, no. First of all, look, fun team, good players, fun coach, good logo. I mean, the logo was never the problem with that team. That was an angry looking cardinal. That thing really looks good on the helmet. Like there's nothing. Go back. It's fine.
Yeah, I think I want to go back.
Go back.
I think I do.
But before you do, though, before you guys go back, I don't know. Are you, Brian? You going back too? I
never really left as much as Andy did.
Oh, you know what?
Well, I was more angry. I was really mad.
Andy is a much more emotional person than I am.
I say, Andy, if you go back, that's fine. But maybe give.
Oh my Lord! Are you about to?
I'm just saying.
Are you about to do the marketing?
I'm just saying.
Are you about to pitch me? Are you about to become a pitch man?
I'm not pitching you on either team. I'm just saying, come to SoFi Stadium, pick team maybe here, and
see, I choose a lot of it based on uniform, and the Cardinals have good uniforms. The Chargers have always had good. My middle child is a Chargers fan. Partially because he thinks Chargers is a cooler name than Rams, partially because we just got him a Chargers shirt first, and also because he's like, I like their uniforms better. And like that is it. And the Rams, I gotta be honest, like the Rams, like there is so much made out of the Rams' new uniforms, and like whether I think they look good particularly on TV. I think that every combination I've seen so far, I actually think looks good. But I also thought their uniforms were wildly overrated. Like even the classic LA blue and gold, like they're good with the Rams. Like there's nothing wrong with them, but they're not like that good.
The Chargers basically took their old school uniform and just kind of put a few bells and whistles on it and kind of enhanced it a little bit.
The Chargers have always had better uniforms than the Rams.
They're sharp. But Ed, if you want to go now, I think you got to pick now. I think you got to go. If you're going to go, right?
I'm going.
It's time.
I've made this decision. Damn it, I am doing it. Because Brian and I years ago, actually, for ESPN the magazine.
You show up tomorrow night in a Cardinals hat.
We did I'm gonna order one. We did a magazine pitch that was actually really fun because we were NFL orphans, and we went to all these different teams around the league to their training camps and had the teams pitch us to adopt them as fans. That's cool. Basically they would try to pitch us to choose them in this magazine. And at the time, I had adopted the Vikings as sort of my team from afar, but I had no real connection to them. And I think mostly I chose them because Prince was from Minnesota. I'm a massive Prince fan.
Good reason.
And when I went to the Cardinals in the beginning with the intention of I'm never going to choose them. I'm just going to write about never choosing them because I was still mad at them. And then once I was at training camp, I found myself getting all nostalgic. And I tried to get then coach Terry Wisenhunt and a couple other players, and then even somebody from the PR department. I'm like, can you get Bill Bidwell to just apologize to me? Can you get him to apologize for moving the team? And if he'll apologize, I'll choose them. And nobody could get the apology. So I ended up choosing the Niners, and that didn't work. I had no connection to the Niners. And really, they're the team that I had the connection to. So I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
Just go do it.
I'm doing
that big. It's really, I'll be honest with you, Andy, nobody gives a shit what NFL team you root for.
But I care. I don't care what
so
other
do whatever makes you happy.
I'm going to do this. I'm in.
I would do it. I would do it now and stick with them. I will. You got Kyler Murray. You got a young quarterback. You got the most exciting wide receiver of football. You got a fun young defense, and they come out to LA every single year. There you go.
I'm doing it. I'm doing this. Thank you, Chris, for the help. I appreciate this.
I'm glad I get up. Brian, since you have a child who's a Chargers fan, I will get you to SoFi Stadium and some powder.
That's right. Yeah, you hook me. I both me and particularly that boy can be bought. The boy especially, he absolutely 100% can be purchased. He is available. Andy will attest to that. That is very much his personality. You can buy him. So, no, we're good. I just like watching. I like a lot of teams. I like teams. I like players. I feel like I want the Rams to be good. I want the Chargers to be good. I like, it's good for the city. It's fun. It's fun to watch. And
the coolest thing, of SoFi Stadium for me is getting there early and seeing all the games on this gigantic video board. It's like the world's largest sports bar. It's one of the coolest things. That's going to be fun.
That's what Jordan Rodrigo always says. She's like the pregame entertainment for the late afternoon game when they put Red Zone on the Oculus is just the greatest thing I've ever seen.
You get there if fans get there early, they can watch all of the games on that big screen. And all of them look like they're gigantic. It's a really kind of surreal deal. It's like when you step in, it's like you're kind of stepping into a Madden game.
Very excited. I'm making this announcement on Twitter.
I'm sure the world really cares.
Get ready.
They've been waiting. Actually, they've been waiting. Andy? It's been a hashtag for a while now.
Get ready for our first 10,000 retweeted tweet.
All right, so let's just update the poll real quick before we go here. As many people in the comments section suggested, this poll was not going to go well for Jared Goff. Over 500 people participating in democracy. I fully trust the counting mechanisms for the polls on Twitter. This is a real honest poll. 83.6% of America would take Justin Herbert over Jared Goff. That's pretty high. Anyway, all right. Chris Hayre, you are really appreciate you staying a little later here. CBSLA covers the Chargers and all kinds of other stuff, and most importantly, gets to hang out with Jim Hill. Thanks for coming on, man. This is fun. We appreciate it. We'll do it again sometime.
A lot of fun, guys. Appreciate it, man. We'll see you down the line.
Absolutely, man. Thanks a lot. Tomorrow we've got
go ahead.
Tomorrow, Justin Very from The Ringer. We're going to get neck deep into all this NBA stuff, and might even be more stuff happening. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks for being here. Danke, Niederland.